We're back on Night Court. Now, last week, we learned that British bank robber Fast Eddie Mayer, who had been on the lam for 20 years since a 1993 English heist, was caught in the Ozarks by local police who had been tipped off by someone who dropped the dime on him. Now, this week, the story, believe it or not, got even more bizarre as Fast Eddie's son, Lee King, may have known more about his father's colorful past than he has been admitting. And joining us is the man who broke the story, Dave Stewart, our buddy from KSPR News, ABC 33 in Springfield, Missouri. Dave, how's it going?
Well, it's been busy, Scott. It's been really busy. This has been kind of a whirlwind last week and a half since the whole story broke. And the story doesn't show any signs of slowing down, especially internationally, where there's just a ton of interest.
Well, welcome back to Night Court. Thanks for joining us. Now, who is this Lee King, and what happened this week involving him that makes this, what already an unbelievably interesting story, even more insanely crazy?
Well, we already know that Fast Eddie Mayer made off with the money from England January 23rd, 1993. He had already sent his partner, his girlfriend, who was Deborah Ann Brett, and their 4-year-old son, Lee King, over to the United States. They checked into a hotel in Boston. So Lee King, and actually his real name is Lee Brett, is the son of Fast Eddie Mayer.
All right, now we got to give him a nickname because I looked at this, and since his dad is Fast Eddie, we got to call him Slow Lee. So he's Slow Lee King, Slow Leaking. That's the nickname I'm giving this guy. Slow Leaking.
You know, and it's kind of appropriate. Maybe he's a little slow to learn from his own mistakes.
So what is this kid seems to be the unbelievable pathological liar? What is going on with this guy? And isn't he kind of the reason that Fast Eddie Mayer's cover got blown in the first place?
He is. It seems that Slow Lee King, as you call him, just couldn't really keep his mouth shut. And he has dated a myriad of women since high school. The first of the girls that we interviewed for our update to the story, he started dating when he was in high school, and he has 3 children. At least according to these women, they all claim to be the mothers of his children. He's got 3 and 2 on the way.
It's like Maury Povich.
It's you are the baby's father, you know. It's crazy.
And how old is this kid? And he's using apparently his background, his father's background, as a way to meet chicks. How old is this kid? And what is the kind of stuff that he told them allegedly that got his dad pinched? And what are some of the other things that Slow Leaking is telling these girls to get them to have his children?
Well, he's telling them a lot, Scott. According to these women, he has told them various things that he has been at 18 when he was with his girlfriend Amanda Zignago. That's the second in this string of women that he's allegedly had kids with. He told her at 18 years old that he was a Navy SEAL and fought as a Ranger in Afghanistan.
Well, apparently that worked, and she's not even the one apparently that ratted out the dad. It was somebody else.
We got to skip ahead 2 women to get to that girl. That's his current wife of 2 months now, Jessica King.
So we got Jessica, and he's not a Navy SEAL, Slow Leaking.
No, he did spend some time in the U.S. Army, a very short stint, and was discharged based on a psychological evaluation.
Well, imagine that. Dave Stewart is our guest from KSPR News in Springfield, Missouri. He is all over this Fast Eddie Mayer story. Now the Slow Lee King story. Now, we have a couple of sound bites that interviews that you've done. The first one here is with one of these girlfriends, Ms. Jacoby, and basically Slow Leaking was telling everybody that his dad was a fugitive. Let's take a listen to that.
He told me that his family was here illegally, which is true, but he told me that it was because his dad is an assassin.
Well, Isn't that interesting? What do you make of her?
Well, this is Kayla, seemed to interview well. We interviewed one of these women over Skype, and we interviewed a couple of them over the phone. They all appear to have the same story. They all appear to say the same things about Lee King, including that, as you just heard, that his dad was an assassin. But what we know is all of this was fabricated. Of course he wasn't an assassin, and of course Lee was not in the U.S. Navy at all. He wasn't a Navy SEAL. He wasn't a Ranger, which is really in the Army. So I don't, how can you believe that an 18-year-old kid has time to go through boot camp, plus all of the other schools that you would have to go through to become a Navy SEAL or a Ranger, either one. It just appears that these girls were young, impressionable. They wanted to believe his story.
And fertile.
They all liked the fact that he was a bad boy. Every single one of them said that they were attracted to that part of Lee King, that he appeared to be this bad boy. Amanda Zignego said, he was like a wannabe cowboy. Up in Wisconsin.
And apparently a wannabe cowboy that's a domestic violence guy, too. Not just the lying, but this gets a little scary and dangerous. Let's take a listen to Miss Zignego talking about what it was like to live with Lee King.
It was in my daughter's room, and I was changing her diaper, and then we were arguing, and he threw me on the floor. My daughter was still on the TV room table, and he pulled out a knife and held it to my neck. This knife was not small. It was huge.
Man. And that's scary. So you got knives involved now. And not only knives, but this is a guy that's going out not just lying about certain things, but he goes to the extent of actually saying that he had won the Purple Heart, that he had won a Bronze Star fighting in Afghanistan. I mean, this guy is really crossing lines here. And what do you make of what he has been saying? And perhaps maybe his new wife was the one that got tired of being lied to and turned in his old man.
Well, and in fact, Scott, that's exactly what happened. Now, I did an interview with Officer David Overcast of the Ozark Police Department, and we find out that it was Jessica King that turned him in on the night that he was arrested for domestic violence. And what's sad is every single one of these women have the same types of stories about Lee King's temper, but they also have the same types of stories to tell about his father, Fast Eddie Mayer, that both of them were very, very controlling. In fact, Amanda, who you just heard talking about being thrown to the ground with a knife held to her throat, also talks about the fact that Lee would not let her renew her driver's license, wouldn't let a phone get installed into their house because he feared that Amanda's parents would come swoop her away in the middle of the night.
Sounds like the fruit of the poisonous tree, as we say in the law. Now, with respect to his lying about these medals, there's an interesting case, Dave, that's going to the U.S. Supreme Court. It's going to be heard actually on the 22nd of February, which is an important date coming up in the case of Fast Eddie Mayer. Here's the case. It's called the Stolen Valor Act, and Congress passed this in 2005 to make it a crime for people to lie about military medals and military honors. It's exactly the same thing that this slow Lee King has been doing to get all these women in bed with him to have his children. So the United States Supreme Court is going to have some tangential relationship to this case, and we may see at some point whether or not these lies are in fact criminally prosecutable. In California and in Colorado, people have been prosecuted, but we don't know until we hear that. So that's sort of a legal, I guess, bow that we can tie on this. What is coming up for Mr. Fast Eddie Mayer, and what is the possibilities of what Slow Lee King could be looking at here in the future, Dave Stewart?
Well, Fast Eddie has a court date coming up on February 2nd, 22nd, rather, the same day as the Supreme Court, the Stolen Valor case. The 22nd of February is a day when some of the evidence will be presented against Fast Eddie Mayer, and a judge will have to decide, based on that evidence, whether or not to bind him over for trial. There's also a detention hearing at the same time where the government has argued that Fast Eddie is a danger to society, that he presents a serious risk of flight,
Yeah,
and a
you
serious
think?
risk that he'll obstruct and attempt to obstruct justice.
Yeah, the last 20 years might give him an indication that they might want to hold him in protective custody. And I know that when something does break in this story, and it will, that you're going to come on and join us. You are all over this story. That is Dave Stewart. He's from KSPR News in Springfield, Missouri, managing editor. Did I get that right?
That's correct.
He is the managing editor, and this is the #1 story going on right now, and certainly the #1 story in my world. I think it's incredibly fascinating. Thank you for joining us, and you are welcome back anytime. Dave Stewart.
Thank you very much, Scott.
Thanks, buddy. We'll talk to you. We'll be right back when we're Night Court.